So the first piece that she wanted to share is the importance of the healing and transmutation of the ego. Now, if you look at her gospel, actually both aspects of her gospel, she goes through this process and discusses this process of how she is transmuting different aspects of her ego so that she can ascend the tree of life into her own awakening. And I see this as incredibly important, not only because the first time I read this, I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And started taking notes. But when I realized that both gospels had it, I knew that it was really significant. So I'm not going to go too deeply into what she discusses, but I will say that you can find out more about this through the book Mary Magdalene Revealed by Megan Watterson. It's an incredible book, incredible read on many levels. And she goes deeply into these 7 aspects that Mary Magdalene talks about that she transmuted in order to go into her awakening process. They're very similar to the 7 cardinal sins, but a little different. So the 7 processes or aspects of the ego are darkness, desire, ignorance, zeal for death, the realm of the flesh, the foolish wisdom of the flesh, as well as the wisdom of the wrathful person. So again, you can find out more about that specific part of it through Mary Magdalene Revealed. But as I sat with this and really received the bigger message from Mary Magdalene through these specific teachings in her gospel, it completely correlated with what she had already shared with me, which was in order for there to be a transmutation, or I should say an embodiment, as well as the ascension process to occur, we need to transmute the ego voices, especially the negative ego voices. So when I talk about ego, I'm not talking about Freud or Jung's full definition of ego. I'm talking about the lower ego, the density of the ego, the negativity of the ego. So when we actually go through these alchemical transmutations, then we have the ability to expand, to rise, and then to embody our divine self. Now, I know that some of you, because I know some of you, and I can imagine those of you who are new, may have gone really far down this path, right? It's so common for people to say, yeah, I know that. Of course, I know that, right? I've been in that category as well. But what I have found is that this transmutation of the ego continues on and on and on throughout our awakening experience. Because the truth is, if we're having a human experience, one of the laws of the human experience is that you're born with an ego. And that ego will collect parts and programs and voices through past life, through familial inheritance of trauma, through our own experiences, right? So we're left with this cornucopia or this landscape of parts, programs, and voices that we're being asked by spirit to transmute over and over and over again. And sometimes when this happens, when we get to a certain place in our evolution, I've seen it many times, and I just recently had an experience of this, where a person is like, I'm good. I don't really need to transmute my ego anymore. I think I've gotten to the place where, I'm awakened. I'm awakened now, right? And that can actually, unfortunately, be a recipe for disaster, unfortunately. And especially as we evolve more and more as spiritual teachers, as conduits, as channels, and put ourselves out there more and more, it's super important to keep that humility. That's one of the things I learned early on. Has been a huge lesson for me. Keep that humility present. Keep that vigilance present. Keep that awareness present, because it can really do a lot of damage, especially if you're a spiritual teacher. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because specifically I just had an experience with a spiritual teacher. I'm not going to go into details, but it was just an eye-opener for me. And when I sat with Mary Magdalene, she's like, please remind everyone this. I was like, yes, definitely. I definitely will. So one of the things that Somatic Awakening does in helping the ego is that in phase 1, which is more of a Gestalt experience, is that it really helps you understand the deeper stories of the voices or the parts that are running the show in a negative way, and bring some stability to them from our higher perspective. But when we go into phase 2, we're actually calling in the divine to come into a direct experience in this clairgnosis, this feeling, sensing, intuitive experience to whatever is here, to the part, the voice, the contraction, the trauma that lives in our body, so that there is an alchemical dissolving. And the more that this happens, the less we have of the charge, of the density of the darkness of our being, and the more we have the ability to awaken and to embody. So it's super important. Keep your ego in check.